All right. Well, hello. Welcome everyone to ASA's webinar on the response to the COVID-19 pandemic with special guest Congressman Garret Graves. I'm Mike Leonard. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs for ASA. And like many of you, I'm working from home, and I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a newborn here. So hopefully things will be quiet on my end. But if you hear screaming in the background, that's why. Also joining us is ASA's President, Glenn Hughes. Welcome, Glenn.
Hello, everyone.
And of course, Congressman Garret Graves. Thank you, Congressman, for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation.
All right. Well, it looks like we've got a good group on here. I've seen 64 people logged in so far, and I think we'll get a few more trickling in, but we'll go ahead and get started here since I know everyone's pretty busy. And thanks everyone for joining us, especially on Good Friday, late in the afternoon. First off, I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe. Of course, if there's anything we at ASA can do to help you and your business during this time, please don't hesitate to reach out. I know many of you have, and we're doing everything we can. That's, again, while we're still working remotely to serve all of you. From a housekeeping standpoint for this webinar, note that everyone's line is muted except for the presenters. I don't know how many of you heard about the California Department of Fish and Wildlife call that they had yesterday that turned into a complete disaster because they had 500 or so people on and no one had their phone muted. So hopefully we'll be able to avoid something like that. For those of you who are participating on your computer, you should be able to see a box on the right-hand side of your screen where you can type in questions. And once we're done with our presentations, I'll be able to see all the questions that have been submitted, and we'll try to answer as many as we can that we can get to. So at any point during the webinar, you can type out a question and we'll get to them again when we start to do Q&A. Before I get started with a few slides about what ASA has been working on, Glenn, is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks again, Garret, so much for joining us today. I know you are extremely busy, and we always appreciate not only the time and dedication you commit to the sport fishing industry, but also your leadership on so many of the bills that impact our business. And so we continue to count on you and your staff, even today. To everyone else on the call, we know, like Mike said, everyone is hurting right now and dealing with the pandemic, and your business has been devastated by closures, both at your facilities and at the retail level, as well as boat ramps and fisheries around the country. So we know tough decisions are being made every day, and want you to know that, like Mike said, we are here to help you during these terrible times. Just need to let us know. So thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks, Glenn. And before I turn it over to Congressman Graves for his remarks, I want to give everyone an overview of what ASA's been working on from a government affairs standpoint since this pandemic began. So if I can figure out how to get my slides going here. All right, and hopefully everybody can see the slides. So from at least a government affairs standpoint, we've really been focusing on 3 main priority areas. The first is to keep fishing open. The second is to keep fishing businesses open. And the third is to support economic relief opportunities. And I'll run through a few examples on each of those of what we've been focusing on. So first, on keeping fishing open, hopefully everyone's been able to view our COVID-19 webpage on the asafishing.org website. The link's there at the bottom of the screen. We have a lot of resources there, including an interactive map where we're keeping track of what each of the state agencies, Fish and Wildlife or Department of Natural Resource agencies are doing for fishing access, whether it's boat ramps, hatcheries, stocking schedules, and how they're responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. We've reached out to each of the governor's offices as well as the state Department of Natural Resources, expressing our support for them keeping access open as much as possible. So they're certainly hearing from us. We're, in addition to sending these letters, in constant communication with a lot of these offices and with these state directors to explain what we feel is the importance of still allowing people to get outside and recreate, and our belief that recreational fishing is an ideal way for folks to get outdoors and restore their physical and mental health, and in a way that's sort of by its very nature a self-isolating activity. The response has been pretty wide-ranging at the state level, as I'm sure many of you know. By and large, state agencies seem to be doing their best to keep access open. There's a few kind of outliers there, Washington State being the most extreme, that has banned fishing statewide. Maryland's up there. They have banned everything. Well, they have banned catch and release fishing, which is also kind of hard to wrap your head around. I just got a notice that Michigan has closed all motorized boating. So again, we're seeing trends toward more closures, but at the same time, if you look across the board, by and large, the state fish and wildlife agencies seem to be doing the best they can to try and keep access open as much as possible, which we appreciate. Next on keeping fishing businesses open, all of our government affairs staff are monitoring how the states and their regions have responded with stay-at-home orders or closures to non-essential businesses. We've got a spreadsheet, which you can see part of here, where we are trying to sort through all that, see how fishing tackle manufacturers and retailers are affected. And as part of our outreach to these governors' offices, we are encouraging them to consider recreational fishing dependent businesses as essential, given that this is a source of food for a lot of people, and also given the fact that since so many states are encouraging fishing as a responsible outdoor recreation activity, people need to have access to supplies in order to go fishing. Therefore, we believe these businesses should stay open in as much form as they can. So that's at the state level. At the federal level, a lot of the states have been getting their guidance from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which has provided a list of what they call national critical infrastructure. And a lot of states are using that list as they're developing their own essential and non-essential business orders. So we've applied for recreational fishing dependent businesses to be included in that list, which is updated periodically. And so we're awaiting a response there. And then third, supporting economic relief opportunities. Hopefully folks have been getting information from us and others about the various small business relief programs, most notably the Paycheck Protection Program, which has just started up last week, which is many of you have applied for. Hopefully those loans are starting to come in. And I'm sure Congressman Graves will talk some more about what we might expect in the near future, since that original $350 billion pot of money that Congress set aside for this looks like it's going to be filling up pretty quickly. So that and many other economic relief opportunities. And then specific to our industry, I know we've heard from many of you on this, on the manufacturing side, knowing that at the end of this month, the first quarter payment of the federal excise tax on fishing equipment is due. So we have petitioned the Treasury Department to delay the due date for that excise tax, which has already been granted for firearms and ammunition. So we're hoping to get the same on our side. I know Congressman letter that's being finalized today to also make that request to the Treasury Department. And again, we're pushing the urgency of that, recognizing that time's of the essence and folks are looking for as much liquidity as they can to get through these coming weeks and months. So hopefully we can get that through as well. So not necessarily a comprehensive list, but several examples of the type of issues that we've been focusing on. Again, not just sending letters, but a lot of calls, emails, constant communication on these and many other issues, as we're, like all of you, trying to quickly respond and adapt to all that's going on. So before turning it over to the Congressman, Glenn, do you have anything you want to add?
I was on mute, and so the answer is no. Let's keep going. Thanks.
All right. Well, let me introduce Congressman Garret Graves. So Congressman Graves represents Louisiana's 6th Congressional District, which covers Baton Rouge and the surrounding area. He is currently serving his 3rd term in Congress and serves on several important committees, at least for the American Sport Fishing Association's issues, the Natural Resources Committee, as well as the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Has been a champion of a lot of legislative efforts that we've been focusing on for the last several years, including the lead author of the Modern Fish Act, has been a champion of the reauthorization of Wallet Bro, the Sport Fish Restoration and Boating Trust Fund, and many, many others. He was the 2016 recipient of ASA's Congressional Champion Award. That's the photo you see here. I'm sure many of you miss seeing Mike Nussman's beautiful smiling face there. So there's that treat for you. But with that, Congressman Graves, I will turn it over to you. Look forward to your comments, and thanks again for being with us.
Great. Well, hey, thank you. And I want to thank ASA for giving us a chance to join you all today and give you an update on some of the things that's going on. Most importantly, I hope that all of you have been safe and healthy and doing okay with maybe a whole lot more family time than you're used to. But I hope that everyone is adapting well and most importantly, again, just staying healthy. Look, in addition to all the efforts to ensure that we continue to have access to our fishing resources, I wanted to take a step back and just give you an update on some of the things we've been doing in Congress. We've done 3 major pieces of legislation, and I hope that there is some form of assistance in there for every single one of you, because I know that this has been really just unprecedented in regard to the trying times. Just to kind of put some numbers on things, in Louisiana during 2008 and 2009, during the recession that we had, on average, our State Department of Labor received about 3,700 unemployment claims per month, per week. Last week, they received in excess of 100,000. So just really extraordinary economic consequences of what we're seeing right now. We've done 3 bills, as I mentioned. The first one primarily focused on providing resources to government agencies for different types of research and assistance, and just addressing the public health emergency. There was a little bit of funds that were in there for small businesses as well, but primarily focused on the government agencies, looking at research, looking at treatment, looking at cures, looking at vaccines, and getting public health funds out the door. The second bill that we did focused largely on employees and sick and family medical leave. There was some additional funds in there for small business loans, but very quickly, one of the first programs that you may find helpful in your business, if you have employees that had to take sick or family medical leave as a result of the coronavirus, and that could have been because they had to stay home with children who were out of school because schools were closed, because they were quarantined, because they were following a public official's stay home order, because they had to help a relative who was sick, and anything along those lines would make you eligible for sick or family medical leave. I know I should remember this, but it either triggered on April 2nd or April 3rd. If you had an employee that had to take sick or family medical leave, you would be given a dollar for dollar payroll tax credit to fund that person's sick or family medical leave. So therefore, providing much assistance to you to be able to continue paying those employees that are in that situation. And it is estimated that your payroll taxes will cover about 25% of your employees. So if you have more than 25% of your employees out on sick or family medical leave, the IRS would actually advance you your future payroll taxes to cover those costs. So pretty important program. There were some expansions on unemployment assistance. There were some additional dollars for testing and supplies, and there was a waiver of any type of co-payment for a coronavirus diagnostic test through VA, through TRICARE, through Medicaid, through Medicare, or through your private insurance carrier. So making sure that economic barriers were not the reason why folks would not get tested for coronavirus. A few other cats and dogs in there, but those were the primary components of the second bill. The third bill is probably the one that most of you will have an interest in. It had a lot of things in there, but I'll run through 3 or 4 of the big ones and then go through some of the cats and dogs. So first of all, and perhaps biggest thing that's in there that I'm sure the fishing community is interested in, is there was a $300 million appropriation in there for the Department of Commerce. Assistance to fishery participants is what it's called. And that's everything from processors to charter fishers to commercial fishers to fishing related businesses. So $300 million. It is administered by the Secretary of Commerce. And in fact, Dustin may be able to correct me. I know we agreed to text of a letter with Congressman Huffman, but I don't know if we've actually sent that letter out. But basically the letter says that we want them to get the funds out as quickly as possible. Just pulled up the law, and basically it just says, for purposes of this section, fishery participants include tribes, persons, which includes you and includes companies, fishing communities, aquaculture businesses not eligible for assistance under Part 1416 of Title 7 of CFR, which is that's part of the agriculture title. So those farm fish businesses, processors or other fishery related businesses who have incurred a direct or indirect loss as a result of COVID-19. And so it says economic revenue losses greater than 35% as compared to the prior 5-year average. And then it also just has this catch-all that says any negative impacts to subsistence, cultural, or ceremonial fisheries. So $300 million. Second thing is for you and all of your employees, there is something called the economic relief payment. It is a payment of up to $1,200 per adult and $500 per dependent child, which is 17 and below. And the way that one works is if you have a adjusted gross of 75,000 or below, or a married couple 150,000 or below, you're entitled to the entire $1,200 payment. And basically, if you're a family of 4, two parents, 2 kids, that means that you're eligible for $1,200 plus 500 plus 500, so $3,400 that you're eligible for. It is reduced by 5% for every dollar you make over those income thresholds. So for example, if you're married and you have 2 kids, you're eligible for $3,400, but if your adjusted gross is actually $151,000, then that means that they take 5% of your $1,000 or $50 and they reduce it. So therefore you're eligible for $3,950, if that makes sense. So that's eligible to everyone. The only thing that would box you out would be your income being in excess of those figures. Number 2, there's a program called the there's an unemployment insurance expansion, and so it was expanded. The unemployment insurance for people that lose their jobs or are laid off, and just so y'all are aware, big component of the bill, maybe a little overly generous, but it waives the 7-day ineligibility period. Normally for the first 7 days you're not eligible. It expands eligibility to state and local governments, to not-for-profits, as well as to self-employed 1099 gig type workers. It provides a $600 per week federal supplement. So if I recall correctly, the average unemployment payment in the United States is $385 a week. There's an excellent chance I'm wrong on that, but I think it's $385 a week. So you would be eligible for up to $985 a week. Normally there's a 12-week period, depending on your state laws, where you're eligible again with the first week waived. First week waiver does not count for the $600, so you could get $600 on your first week you're out of work. It extends unemployment insurance for an additional 13 weeks, so you'd be eligible for a total of 25 weeks. And once again, it expands eligibility to local and state government employees, to not-for-profit, or I guess I would say former employees, not-for-profit former employees, or for 1099 gig worker, independent contractor type folks. Third component, and probably the most popular, is the Paycheck Protection Program. And what that one is we funded $349 billion, as Mike said, toward a program that provides a forgivable loan to small businesses. That generally means a business that has 500 employees or less. However, there is a NAICS code issue where the 500 employees may not apply to you, and we're happy to jump in the weeds on that with folks who need more details there. But the way this one works, and this is something that is open to virtually any small business. It is open to not-for-profits. It is open to independent contractors. It's open to 1099 employees. It's open to self-employed folks. And the way this works is that you effectively calculate your average monthly payroll, which you could look at your 2019 payroll divided by 12, and there's your number. You could look at your last 12 months, but basically you determine what your average monthly payroll is. You multiply it times 2.5, and that's what you're eligible for. So if your payroll is $100,000, then you're eligible for $250,000. And the way this one works is that it goes through your local bank or credit union. There are currently 30,000 approved lenders across the United States, and that number is increasing every day. As long as you use 75% of that loan, 75% of that loan for payroll, which includes healthcare benefits, retirement, things like that, then your loan can be forgiven. Let me be clear. You use 75% for payroll. The remaining 25% or less must be spent on rent for your business, mortgage interest, or utilities. So again, 75% on payroll. If you spend the rest on those three things, then you can have your entire loan forgiven. It is designed to cover your payroll for an 8-week period. So Paycheck Protection Program. You would go to your local bank. It would ideally, because of Banking Secrecy Act issues, it would be better for you to go to a bank where you have an existing financial relationship. So that program, once again, $349 billion. There is, as of yesterday afternoon, there were over $100 billion in loans approved and another $90 billion in process. As Mike alluded to, we are going to expect to run out of money in this program within the next few weeks. We are working now to replenish it to the tune of $250 billion. However, just yesterday, an effort by Senator McConnell to move that clean $250 billion resupply or replenishment forward was objected to. Senator Schumer and Speaker Pelosi have indicated that they would like to add a number of other things to the bill, and right now there's not an agreement. If I had to just take a guess, and I haven't read any news today, so I could be really wrong, I think that the Republicans probably let this thing move forward, get close to the program running out of money, and then put Pelosi and Schumer right in front of all these business owners that are about to go under, these small businesses and employees that are about to go under, and basically say that this is why you're not getting your loan, your forgivable loan. So I do expect it to be replenished. We may have a little bit of political fireworks between now and then, but that program is very popular. Last one to bring up is one called the EIDL. It's EIDL. It's a loan program that was designed to provide up to a $2 million loan with a 30-year term, 3.75% interest rate for businesses, 2.75% for not-for-profits. Again, 30-year term up to $2 million. The reality is, it appears that the program is so oversubscribed that I have heard rumors that they may limit loans to $25,000. The program allows you to get a $10,000 of that may be a grant, even if you are denied a loan. And the only thing I would say is that you are eligible for both the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL loan. Just make sure you don't pay for the same thing twice, because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble there. Bill has a number of cats and dogs in it, everything from allowing you to do grab losses, 5-year carryback losses for your 2018, 19, and 20 taxes. So you can actually grab those, pull them forward, and liquidate them right there and turn them into cash. It gives you the potential to have an employee retention credit of up to $5,000 per employee if you had a drop in revenue, and there's certain thresholds there that apply, but a drop in revenue for your company for the comparable quarter to 2019. It is a 50 cent on the dollar payroll tax credit, retention credit. There is a program where you can defer your payroll taxes for 1 year, then have 2 years to pay them back. There's things, everything from no early withdrawal penalty for tapping your retirement account. There are programs where you could have more flexibility on how you use your flexible or healthcare savings account. All sorts of things that are in there that are kind of cats and dog type provisions to help businesses, especially between the legislation and on the regulatory side, some of the administrative moves that the administration has taken, providing a lot of flexibility on paying back debts to companies, to businesses that have mortgages or other debts. And then there's the Main Street lending program for businesses that are mid-sized, between 500 and 10,000 employees, run by the Federal Reserve. Just announced yesterday, the program will provide low and no interest loans, and also potentially some equity stakes for some of those mid-sized companies. So that is a whole lot, my point here, just in opening up to y'all for questions or comments or what have you, is that there are numerous programs that are out there for individuals, that are out there for small businesses, that are out there for medium-sized businesses to offer a lifeline or a shot in the arm. And there really shouldn't be anybody that doesn't have some opportunity to help keep them afloat, at least for the next few months. Over.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Congressman. That was a lot of great, helpful information for everyone. And appreciate all the leadership you're providing and guidance and the insight. So we've got several questions that have come in. Again, if folks have more, just type them into the question comment box that should show up on your screen. So first one we'll start with, Congressman, interested in your thoughts or insights here. So this is from David Slickers. So we are extremely concerned about the lack of planning for a plan to return to work safely. Significant focus on the shutdown with little to no regard to the major jobs lost around the country. So do you have any thoughts? I mean, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but as you know, data coming in this week showing that maybe the curve is flattening sooner and less severe than we thought. You know, what do you expect or hope the rollout might look like for getting the economy back up and running again?
Yeah, so look, you're exactly right. The president this week began talking about putting together a second coronavirus task force that would be focused on kind of the reopening of the economy. I think that you're probably going to see, as we get a little bit smarter on this stuff, you're going to see some revised guidance coming out of the CDC and the NIH on just kind of protective practices. And what I mean by that is if we begin seeing a flattening and hopefully a downward trend, which in Louisiana we are seeing a little bit of a flattening right now in the number of cases. It is happening because of social distancing. It is happening because of better hygiene practices. And so how do you actually incorporate some of those lessons learned and some of the effective protective or social distancing practices into more of a normalization of our economy and businesses? And so I'll make up maybe bad examples and say, well, maybe they go ahead and open restaurants back up, but they require the tables be at least 10 feet apart, or they require that the restaurants offer or provide surgical masks, as crazy as that may sound, to the customers coming in, and hand sanitizer. So there is a task force the president set up that is looking at, or he is setting up, that will look at how to reintroduce or how to reopen the economy, as well as I understand, looking at longer term economic recovery type options that are out there. I personally believe if we've already done 3 bills, we're very close to doing a 4th that would replenish the PPP loan program. I firmly believe we're going to need a 5th, which would focus on long-term economic recovery. But I do think when you look at the trillions we've done through the CARES Act, the 3rd coronavirus bill, you look at the trillions in activity that the Federal Reserve is doing, it is premature right now to go dump trillions and trillions more on the economy, because I think we would do it in an inefficient manner. And what I mean by that is let's get better idea of the longevity, how long this thing's going to last, when we can more accurately project that it will come down, and let's get a better idea quantifying which industries are most impacted. Then we can make a more tailored, a more specific recovery package response to what's going on. So I'm a big fan of letting the trillions we've done to take in the economy, and then let's make a more informed decision in coming weeks about what a longer term recovery package looks like.
All right, thanks for that. So I guess switching to a familiar topic that was sort of the crisis affecting us several months back. And I know there was talk early on when the economic impact started being realized. Looking at tariffs, I know there was a push early on, especially with the China tariffs, as maybe a source for relief. This is from John Hogue. Would you see any possibility to grant the industry tariff relief, with help of retaining jobs and the other economic benefits we might see from it? Are you hearing much from the administration on how open they might be to exploring, reconsidering some of the tariffs they've been putting in place?
Yeah, this one's an interesting one, Mike, because on the one hand, we certainly need to look at all the tools that we can use to help to revitalize the economy. But I also think that what you're going to see as a result of this, a long-term consequence, a result of this, is you're going to see more focus on domestic control of the supply chain. I think that there's been a lot of frustration and realization in the United States about how challenging it has been for us because of the loss of control of the supply chain, meaning we have ceded manufacturing in many areas, everything from PPE issues, simply the simple paper or synthetic polysurgical mask, to some of the ventilators and complex medicines. We've ceded that to China. And so I think that you're going to see much more efforts focused on trying to pull back or trying to reestablish domestic manufacturing capabilities, which that in itself would seem to run contrary to lifting the tariffs, because you would want to incentivize. There has been discussion and have been efforts to lift tariffs on PPE type equipment, as you well know, as well as even sending our own planes over there to go pick stuff up. So while I think it's I guess I could say that it's on the table, there has been a big anti-China sentiment that was even growing before coronavirus that I think has really been put on steroids. And so I think efforts to lift tariffs from products that are manufactured over there are probably going to run into some headwinds.
All right, those are all fair points. It was a tough issue before, and it hadn't gotten any easier. That's for sure. So switching back to access, which was one of the key themes we've been focusing on. This is from Spencer Marshall, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit more. He's expressing concern. We're seeing in Florida and elsewhere where, especially for boating access, ramps, a lot of closures coming in, not only at the county, state level, Army Corps of Engineers. You've got this big network web of management authorities that are all handling this seemingly differently, and it's really tough as a community to understand how the decisions are being made where access is being closed down. He's put the question forward, can we work with the president on a statement to governors to stress the importance of keeping ramps open, 50-foot distance, no more than 10 per boat. I know that the president's been fairly deferential to allow the states to put in place across the board whatever appropriate measures they think are best for public safety. I'd say for us, and I know a lot of other industries as well, it has just been incredibly complicated and challenging to try and sort through how each state is handling, even something as nuanced as fishing and boating access. I don't know if you have any thoughts or guidance, as we're navigating at a day-to-day level right now, or maybe as we get through this on the back end, what lessons we might be able to learn and apply that could help with a more kind of coordinated, thoughtful, surgical approach to something like keeping public access open, where, right now, I think everyone's just sort of operating off of whatever limited information they might have in their own limited area. So it's a tough one for us to crack. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
Yeah. Look, so one, I do not expect the White House to step in and force any type of opening or closing of states. I think that they're going to continue to defer to governors and to county administrators and parish folks in Louisiana. On that, however, I do think, and I mentioned this earlier in a different capacity or a different question, Mike, I do think that you're going to see the federal government continue to update sort of the guidance or best practices. And I think that, just like I said on the mask issue earlier, initially they were saying, no, masks don't work, don't use them. And then they came back and said, well, actually, we think they do. I think that as we get better at this stuff, as PPE becomes more available, their guidance is going to adjust accordingly. And I think that our best bet is trying to see if we can get the federal government to issue some guidance on how we can actually open up things to access and improve and make note, just like you said, that as long as, as long as you have your launches that, allow a 50-foot buffer or whatever the number is, then that works just fine. I was trying to remember which, I was looking for the email, but my wife actually, we're on the National Park Service, some email list there because some of our passes, and we got something saying that they were actually opening up for free, one of the parks, no entrance fee anymore. I mean, so in some cases you have parks that are effectively incentivizing, folks to go there, and in other cases you have parks that are shutting down. So I think our best bet is just trying to get the administration to continue pushing and moving this direction of opening the economy back up, following safe practices, just like we have adapted right here in this meeting. Who would have guessed 2.5 months ago that we would be doing this via video conference right now? I mean, no one would have, but yet we've adapted to these conditions. There are other ways of adapting by simply using social distancing and safe engagement practices where you can continue to fish and have access. And that's what we need to be pushing the administration out, is on that type of guidance to governors and other local officials.
Yeah, and I'll say, the diversity of responses has been pretty remarkable, where a lot of states have waived fishing license fees. They're actively promoting, encouraging fishing opportunities. And contrast that with Washington State that's banned fishing. At the federal level, we're seeing a lot from the Department of Interior. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service just made an announcement yesterday that they're expanding hunting and fishing access, and an announcement that's opening more areas of wildlife refuges to hunting and fishing than they've ever done before. So you're seeing different agencies, different states go in polar opposite directions, and some of it has to do with what they're dealing with on the ground, with how much the virus has affected them. But again, the lack of consistency, and especially where decisions are being made that just don't seem to understand what recreational fishing is and is not, and just seem to have sort of a sweeping, we're going to shut everything down just because it's easier that way.
Yeah.
And we hope that there will be some lessons learned throughout it, that hopefully this never happens again, but that we won't see these types of what seem to be arbitrary and unnecessary decisions made.
Yeah. Well, I do think, we were talking earlier, if we can get the federal agencies to start issuing guidance on their own facilities, that just incorporates some of these best practices, I think that we can then encourage the governors and others to mimic that.
Oh, yep. So jumping back to PPP, this is from Richard Fisher. We've heard many reports of banks and lenders asking for much more cumbersome paperwork than Congress and SBA requires. Has there been thought put into strongly asking banks to streamline the approval process for small business owners who need the money quicker than the 60 to 90-day projections we're seeing?
We have we did a conference call with the SBA administrator and associate administrator and other folks yesterday. We were on the phone with her for an hour and 40. Well, on the phone with her and then some of the associates for about an hour and 45 minutes. I had another call with the same associate administrator and the Louisiana banks anyway for about an hour and a half last night. So there have been a ton, and that's just representative of just me, and just yesterday the calls we've been on. So there have been a ton of calls with Treasury, with SBA, with banks, talking through this a little bit. And look, these calls have been very helpful because look, we can all be frustrated by the imperfections, but I got to tell you something. The fact that this program did not exist on March 27th, the president signs the bill into law, and 1 week later it stood up. And yes, it is imperfect, but it stood up, and within 6 days, you have $100 billion in loans already. I mean, this is so unprecedented and so remarkable for the federal bureaucracy to be able to turn something on that quickly. And so you have seen every few days, Treasury and SBA have issued updated guidance, updated frequently asked questions and things along those lines. They have issued guidance that has explicitly said, as long as you follow the guidance at the time of your loan application or at the time the bank acted, we will not come after you for that, for any actions that you took. Yesterday, there were a lot of calls a lot of questions from banks or requests from banks for the SBA and Treasury to provide clarity on the 10-day period, to provide clarity on directors and other bank employees' ability to pursue these types of loans. More clarity on documentation and on what onus the bank has to document some of the forgiveness expenditures. And so all of that is happening. And I understand that this program is far from perfect. I understand that banks need more clarity because of, we're talking about giving out $350 billion that the federal government is supposed to be backing 100% of. These banks do not want to be left with the liability of these loans, which makes all the sense in the world. But SBA and Treasury have been really good and clear that they understand that they're asking folks to step out on a limb, and it appears that their messaging has been pretty clear that their enforcement actions will recognize that, sort of on the fly type approach that this whole thing, really represents. And so we did ask yesterday and numerous meetings and calls for SBA and Treasury to provide more clarity to banks on things like documentation, and even 2 days ago, SBA and Treasury released some documents that help provide a little bit more guidance, and I think they're going to continue doing it. In fact, I don't know if they did, they were supposed to be releasing something else last night. I would just encourage you, look, if you want to share stuff with us through Mike or want to reach out to me or Dustin in our office and just have some thoughts like that to share, please do, because we are talking to Treasury and SBA every day. Every day we're talking to them.
All right. So this next question comes from John Personaire with Recreational Fishing Alliance. I'm not sure there's another member of Congress I would feel comfortable being capable of responding to this question except you. This is of federal marine fisheries management, as you do. So it can be assumed that a considerable drop in recreational fishing, I guess specifically saltwater recreational fishing, will occur in response to mandates to curb the virus. It can be assumed that this reduced effort will also result in a reduced catch and harvest. So what can Congress do to ensure that anglers and businesses will have an opportunity to access this underutilized quota, whether it's later in 2020 and beyond, through extensions or reopening of seasons?
Well, this is partially where I think y'all pat yourselves on the back. Look, this is one of the things that the Modern Fish Act was designed to do, right? It was designed to provide better, more accurate, more tailored science to the overall federal fisheries management decisions. And so, I can't thank y'all enough for all of y'all's work to help push and educate people on modern fish that the president signed into law, the Modern Fish Act. But this is exactly what the objective was to have a more agile management system that was based upon better science that is really more specific or more tailored to the actual conditions that we're seeing. And so our conversations, and nothing formal's happened yet, but our conversations with Commerce have been exactly what was just asked, and it's that that we make sure that as we're looking at 2020 and 2021 management decisions, that they are based upon the latest science and stock assessments and fisheries pressure, which has obviously experienced a huge drop as a result of the stay-home orders, as a result of the sickness that is going around the country, going around the world, and as a result of the huge drop in the number of restaurants and others that are open that are decreasing pressure on the commercial side.
Yeah, thanks for that. Agreed. We're, as we look at the Modern Fish Act and getting more consideration of recreational fishing and different ways to manage, hopefully we can start to see that play out. We get penalized by NOAA fisheries a lot when they think we're catching too many fish. You'd like to think the reverse could be true.
Goes both ways. Yep.
Put it to the test. So switching gears a little bit, we mentioned the federal excise tax on sport fishing equipment and our push to get Treasury to delay that. And thanks again, Congressman, for signing on to this letter that'll hopefully go out later today.
Yep.
Pushing that. I guess, Congressman, do you have any other insights or guidance? We at ASA and certainly our members don't have a ton of experience trying to get requests in front of the Treasury Department. Do you have any thoughts or guidance on how we can especially prioritize that given the pretty quick turnaround we're going to need an answer from them on?
Yeah, well, look, first, as you know, not unprecedented, Treasury has granted similar deferrals to similar types of products. And so I think that, there already clearly is a process in place in terms of getting the attention of the secretary. We've been doing weekly calls with him, so I haven't seen when our call is next week, but hopefully it is early in the week and we'll have an opportunity to bring this up with him. I think also focusing on some of the Financial Services Committee members and Finance Committee members. I know that Bruce Westerman from Arkansas has been a big help on the letter, and French Hill from Arkansas is one of those folks who really has been fantastic and has the ear of Treasury. Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, who I know a lot of you know, is another the ranking member of the Financial Services Committee, and Kevin Brady of Texas, Ways and Means ranking member, is another one who has a very close relationship with Mnuchin. And so those are a few of the people that I think I would try and focus on because of committee assignments and existing relationship. But look, we've got some good relations within Treasury, and we'll certainly be working those as soon as that final version of the letter is as soon as we get all the signatures in the letter and have the final version.
Well, thank you for that. And tariffs were sort of a foray for us into Senate Finance, House Ways and Means. So hopefully all those members that were running away from us when we wanted to talk to about China tariffs, this might be an easier issue for them to dive into for us. So
yep.
Making those rounds again. So jumping back to PPP, this is from Travis Miller. Are you hearing from banks or others that they're doing loans for larger small businesses first before small businesses with one to two employees are getting considered? He says he's not heard from one charter or guide that has been able to get money from the SBA or a bank.
Travis, good to hear from you. No, I have not heard that at all. Look, I guess I could imagine a scenario whereby banks are prioritizing their larger customers, but I haven't heard that. And I know that there are banks in Louisiana that are processing smaller loans for smaller companies. But I want to clarify one thing. If I heard you said, I'm not sure if you did, but I think I might have heard you say self-employed folks. And if you did, I just want to be clear that those that are self-employed, the eligibility just opened up today for those loans for folks that are self-employed. The loan programs through the Small Business Administration historically did not open up eligibility to self-employed, to 1099, independent contractors, gig workers, but we changed that in the bill. So now they're all eligible and not-for-profits as well. And so that is an expansion, and SBA was not really familiar with that. Also, it is more complicated, as I think we've discussed before, on how someone who's self-employed, how you would calculate their income for the previous year, because effectively they would have to go back and look at their draws, which they might have only done once or twice a year, any type of commission or something they pulled from that LLC or however they have it set up. So it just opened up today. So I don't think that those types of applications would have been moving as quickly because for the other companies that opened up last week. But I'll just say it again, I'm not aware of anybody prioritizing one over the other, but I certainly could see banks doing that for just trying to take care of their big customers first.
And follow up from Travis, I think was my misinterpretation of his question. So he was referring to EIDLs, so the economic interest.
Sorry.
Okay. Do you have any insights on that?
So EIDLs, pretty much no one's been processed. And what happened is EIDL is being run by SBA through SBA's information system. PPP is having interface with SBA through the E-Trans system. However, it is being done largely through the capacity of the banks, of the 30,000 banks and credit unions and lenders that are out there across the country that are approved today. And so the SBA system was completely overwhelmed on the EIDL because, as you remember, EIDL was approved first. It was the only program that was really out there, and it was completely overwhelmed. And so based on the funding that they have appropriated for EIDL, they were anticipating doing loans up to the cap, which I mentioned earlier is $2 million with a 30-year term, 3.75%. Based on the applications that they've received. And I want to be clear, this is not official. This is me based on conversations with different folks. I think that what they're probably doing is they are looking at the total amount of loans that are being applied for. And I think they're probably going to reel back that $2 million cap to something much, much smaller. And rumors I've heard could be as low as $25,000. It is my understanding that today is the first day that they're actually making deposits based upon the EIDL application. So Travis, you are not being discriminated against. As I understand, everyone is being discriminated against because the system got completely overwhelmed and they don't have enough money in that program to handle the load of loans that have been applied for.
All right, and thanks for that clarification. Sorry for my original misinterpretation. So we're getting pretty close to an hour here. I guess a couple more here just to run through real quick. This isn't a question, but a comment from Daryl Carpenter from down your way who
Hey, Daryl.
seconded this comment. He says he would like to take a second to commend you and your staff. They've been exceptionally responsive to all of our needs. Always good to hear that your folks are doing a good job, I know.
I know Daryl gets mad at me every once in a while, but no, thanks, Daryl. I appreciate it and looking forward to connecting with you soon, hopefully when we have all this stuff lifted.
And then one last softball question for you from Ralph Duda. What's the biggest bass you've caught and what were you throwing?
God dog it. I see, this is one of those things where I'm contemplating not telling you the truth. No, all right, so I don't even know. Can I admit this now? Is this being recorded? What are we doing here?
It is being recorded.
It is being recorded. All right. Well, let me think about how to do this then. So there may or may not have been a place that we maybe weren't supposed to be. But biggest bass I caught was about 6.5 pounds, and it was actually at night. I was fishing with a worm. I don't remember the color. I just remember that we had to make a quick exit and we were running through the swamp and there were alligators. It was dark and there were alligators that were just all over the place and they were splashing when we were taking off. And I'll just say that those were back when I was a little bit misguided, but that's the truth. And that was the largest bass that I caught.
All right, not a bad note to end.
So sorry about that. I apologize, but I have reformed since then.
Well, and there were a lot of good questions here that we didn't have a chance to get to. I will respond to as many as I can, Congressman, if you're willing, and can work through Dustin if there are any specific.
Yeah, please.
That we might be able to circle back on. So thanks everybody for joining. Glenn, I want to turn to you for any final closing remarks, if you have any.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thank you so much, Representative Graves, for your time on a late Friday afternoon. There's a great point in the Modern Fish Act. I'm glad you mentioned it. As everyone on the call can tell, you are our champion for sport fishing. Also, if you on the call don't know Mike Leonard, he is a superstar here in DC, and with his team, they've done a tremendous job really representing the best interests of the sport fishing industry across this country. Again, as Mike said earlier, you've seen what over the last 4 weeks, we're focused on keeping fishing open and keeping fishing businesses open and supporting the economic relief. And all that information you're going to be able to find on our websites, asafishing.org or keepamericafishing.org. So we appreciate the leadership and direction of our board, and we'll continue to communicate with our members with all these issues and more, and ICAST as well. So good luck for the rest of the month, and happy Easter, and may you get over the hump and on the other side soon.
All right, well, thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Congressman Graves again, and thanks everybody for joining. I guess one last comment, this, despite Congressman Graves' fishing story there is being recorded. We will share it with ASA members. So for all of you, if you had to leave early or for folks that weren't able to join, so we'll make it available. And thanks again, everyone. Have a great weekend. Look forward to staying in touch and hopefully seeing everybody very soon. Take care.
Thanks, Mike. Happy Easter.
Thank you.